What up, y'all? It's your boy, One Sir Grove. It's the second day of spring, and I just wanted to let y'all know that out here on the East Coast, man, it doesn't really fucking feel like spring. Not really. At least not the spring that I'm accustomed to from childhood, growing up on the West Coast, having moved to the East Coast. Man, I gotta say, and as I've said before, by the way, thank you for tuning in. If it's your first time or if you've tuned in before, if you're a fan of the show and you support the show, man, we fucking appreciate you. And that's speaking from 495. So, yo, check it out. These seasons. Sometimes, man, depending on where someone is, these seasons aren't what they used to be. Sometimes. Some people I've talked to, they've said, yeah, the seasons they're pretty normal where I am. Everything seems pretty, normal. And then other people, they're like, no, shit is not the same anymore. Things have changed. My grandmother, before she passed, she said something really strange. She had dementia. I don't even know I'm talking with this voice, man, like this. But anyway, my grandmother, she had dementia. And she lived a long, healthy, productive life. And she had an English-style garden. She used to work in her garden. And she swam at the community college swimming pool with the other seniors in her swim group. And so she was very active outside. She worked in her garden like every day. Swam every day. Drove herself around town into her late 80s. Once she got dementia, she passed rather quickly within a span of a few short years. Loved my grandmother dearly. Grandmother was a smart woman. Talked about her before. She served in the U.S. Army as one of the women's first women. As America's one of the U.S. military's first women in the military. She liked to read. She was an avid reader. She used to read the newspaper, sit in front of the TV. She used to watch the news around the clock. She loved Oprah Winfrey. She loved soap operas. She loved the Animal Planet. She loved the Weather Channel. And she knew all this stuff about the world because she basically sat in front of the news. And her memory was phenomenal. So she would always share these anecdotes and these different news tidbits and factoids and things like this. By the same token, she also read a lot of tabloids, The Inquirer and all this other kind of stuff. And, fake news type shit. And so anyway, my point is that when I moved to the East Coast, I was talking to my grandmother on the phone just shortly before she passed. And what was really messed up, man, is I would be talking to her and we'd be having a totally what I perceived to be coherent conversation. Her mind seemed very sharp. And she was it was really odd. It was like there was a spike in her intelligence at her age. She was smarter than she'd ever been. Then all of a sudden she'd be like, who are you again? It was really ghostly, man. It was really fucking eerie. She had, into the conversation in the middle of nowhere, out of the blue, out of nowhere, she would have no recall of who I was. She thought my name was Peter. I don't even have a relative named Peter. And she would ask me, am I this person? Am I that person? Sometimes it would be a relative of ours, but she had so much stuff mixed up, man. And, but one day, man, my point is, one day, when her mind seemed laser focused, I said, Grandma, the weather's, it's strange out here. Seasons are changing. And she's and she told me, she said, yeah, that seems to be the case here as well. She went on to tell me how in the Northwest, in and around the Seattle area, she said that that one day it would be rain. One day it'd be sunshine, be all sunshiny and happy outside with that, like, child's picture depiction of a, like, kid's crayon drawing of, like, a happy, smiley sun with clouds, but like a sunny, like, happy cloud day, right? And she was like, it would be picturesque, like, totally beautiful. And then the next day it would be snowing. And she's like, Mother Nature doesn't seem like it knows what it wants to do. And so that seems pretty normal, right? Up to this point, what she said, because you have that in, like, places like Colorado. Snows, and then there's sun. There's sun, and then it snows, and it's back and forth, and that's normal. But where I'm from, that's not fucking normal. But that's not the clincher. And then she said, so sometimes it's kind of overcast, and then again, it's like back to snow. And she said, and then at other times, it's just a void. My grandmother, at like 8 years old, used the exact word, the exact term, the exact expression. She said, in other days, it's just a void. I said, yo, Grandma, like, what do you mean? And she said, well, that's just it. I just can't really put my finger on it. The only way I can describe it is that the atmosphere, everything that surrounds us is, it's just a void. And she said it, man, with certainty. Like, that was the reality, man. And I can say, like, so in terms of the Farmer's Almanac and keeping, like, tabs on the cycles of the weather going back forever in terms of what we as humans have kept on human record, these seasons I have read in different academic and scholarly journals, the seasons, depending on where one is, they can be either normal, just like people are like, yeah, it's pretty much this as it always has been, but then, like, some spaces away in, like, a different time space, right? Like in a different city, in a different town, in a different parish, in a different village, in a different somewhere down the street, the seasons can be behind by like a month. So where it's supposed to be spring, it's still the winter. Doesn't that seem fucking a little strange to you? That in some places things are totally normal, but in other places the seasons are behind by like a month or more. So let me be a little bit more specific. So what I've observed is that when I arrived on the East Coast about 15 years ago, plus some, the weather seemed pretty mild. It was cold, but I've lived in the mountains. I'm from a mountainous region, so it just seemed like the cold winter where I come from. Didn't seem like fucking brutal or like super extreme or anything like that. It just seemed like the wintertime on the East Coast. When I arrived on the East Coast, I would say it was, in hindsight, kind of a bad winter. It was, I had come from Chicago, where historically Chicago has brutal, extreme, harsh winters. So when I left Chicago in the middle of the winter, or I should say rather at the beginning of the winter, snow was coming up to be about knee deep. When I got to the East Coast, it wasn't that thick of snow by any means, but there was snow on the ground. It looked like an Arctic region. It was in a deep freeze. And then after the winter, it was fucking hot, just like it had been in Chicago. Humid. I mean, seemed like the East Coast to me. Didn't seem abnormal. Nothing seemed out of whack. It just seemed fucking normal. So 10 years about 10 years go by approximately. and things started to shift. The East Coast winters that I had grown to be accustomed to and had been exposed to, they started to be more extreme. Crazy fucking snowstorms, torrential rain, and by the way, in case you didn't know, I've shared this with a lot of people who don't know. People, for whatever reason, some of them tend to believe that it rains more in Seattle than anywhere else. I think some people in their minds, they attribute it to the fact that Washington State has a fucking rainforest, one of only 2 rainforests on planet Earth. So Washington State, unbeknownst to a lot of people, has a rainforest, like the Amazon rainforest. There's a rainforest in the state of Washington, and I've been there. So some people think because Seattle is some distance, in other words, kind of sort of close to the rainforest on the peninsula there, in Washington State, on the opposite coast, the other Washington, far from New York here by some thousands of miles. There's a rainforest, and so people think, well, Seattle's kind of sort of, well, it's in the same state, and there's a rainforest in the state, so they think it rains fucking more than anywhere else. Like, in their minds, because they've been told this, because they're from there, because a friend of theirs is from there, or someone they know is from there, it has become an urban legend. They believe that it rains more in Seattle than, like, anywhere else in, like, the Western Hemisphere, which is pure fucking fallacy. It's purely a fallacy. It's fallacious. It's not even fucking close to being true. It actually rains 42 to 44% more here than it does in fucking Seattle, Washington. And that's a fact. So the next time someone says to you, I just clap my hands like, the next time someone says to you that it rains more in Seattle than anywhere else, you can say, hey man, Grove shared a fact with me that I looked up and it turns out to be true. That is untrue. What you were saying in that you believe that it rains more in Seattle than it does anywhere else. It doesn't even fucking come close to the amount of rain that they get out on the East Coast in New York and the DC metro area, back and forth from DC to New York and New York to DC. No, man, doesn't even fucking come close. It rains in Seattle, but out here in New York on the East Coast, we have torrential downfall, where it's like Olympic-sized swimming pools of rain coming down. They don't have that in fucking Seattle. Nothing like that. Not even close to like that. A fucking rainy day in Seattle is like a joke on the East Coast. Same thing with California's heat. People from Florida and from Philadelphia and New England and the East Coast, DC and New York, who haven't been to California, they don't realize that there is no humidity in California. They think that it's a lot of folks, a lot of folks just believe that there is no humidity, that there is humidity in California the same way that there is in Florida. They're like, well, it's a sunny state, so there's got to be humidity. And there is none. There's none comparable. So it's also the opposite in that people who are from California and the West Coast, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Washington, for whatever reason, if they haven't been out here to the East Coast, in their minds, they think, like I did when I was a kid watching Sesame Street, oh yeah, well, out east, or back east is what we used to say, back east there, in New York and Florida, where it gets warm and it's hot, in the city and all the different cities out there, it's just like out here in California. It's not even fucking close. Totally different atmosphere. It's wet heat. It's disgusting, in my opinion, fucking just gross humidity, and it's not the same shit. But again, people from out here who they watch movies and shit, they think California has humidity the same way that it does out here, and vice versa in that, or rather the opposite in that people from California, they think that it's just some dry heat out here on the East Coast. And it's not. It's not dry heat. It's not dry desert heat. It's wet. It's nasty. It's disgusting. It's gross. And it's fucked up. So, in that, the weather here, man, for like the first 10 years that I was here was pretty normal. It was like the cold regions of like the Pacific Northwest. Like, if you're in the mountains, it's just it was the same shit. But then it started to get extreme, man. And we started to have these snowstorms that would like engulf the East Coast. And we'd have neighborhoods like buried for a week, and then we'd have to dig out and shit. It was fucking crazy. You can go online, you can Google 12 feet of snow, Boston, New York. Just Google that. 12 feet of snow, Boston, New York. And you can see communities of people with 12 feet of fucking snow. Like they live at the South Pole or the North Pole, like an Arctic region. That's what it looks like in these fucking photos. And then we had some wacky shit. One Christmas, it was like 72 degrees. People were wearing flip-flops and t-shirts. I kid you not. I was rocking a fucking t-shirt. Christmas time. Outside. It was like Hawaii, like monsoon, like weather. And it was actually quite beautiful. Very, very alarming though. Very strange. And then after that was gone, it was like, it was brutally fucking extremely cold. So we've had these different shifts occur in that what historically would be a mild winter became extreme winters. And then that shit disappeared, and then it became like mild again, but even more mild than like ever before. You get it? So it was like what was a normal winter when I first came here became an extreme winter, and then after so many extreme winters, the winters became mild winters, milder than anything I had experienced from the first 10 years of being on the East Coast. So that's my intel report. That's my atmospheric, geospatial, meteorological report to you, the American people, my audience, our 495 audience. That's what's been happening out here. These motherfuckers, whomever they are, who do not believe in global climate change, I will say this. I have seen on historic record where I believe at some point the Earth's mean or average temperature was like 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's basically like a fucking fireball. I have seen changes in the Earth's atmosphere going back in writing, models, depictions, text, documents, records, hundreds of millions of fucking years of information where it's known that the Earth has undergone these cyclical changes. Okay? So if somebody says they don't believe in global climate change, they're kind of fucking out of their minds in some respect. They are wrong because the Earth always and forever changes. It is part of human mother nature. It is fucking a fact. And so if somebody doesn't believe in global climate change, they're smoking something, man, or they're just tripping, period. Or both. So look, the Earth undergoes changes that are cyclical. Global warming happens cyclically. So what I would say to folks who argue that climate change is a function of humans' input. In other words, humans, human activity. Those who say that global climate change is a result, therefore a function of what humans are doing on this planet, I would say in a very minuscule, very micro way, it is. Because Mother Nature is powerful. Look what happened when America dropped an atomic bomb, or rather detonated an atomic bomb in and around Japan. was fucking horrific, dude. Like, why are humans detonating nuclear weapons on planet Earth in the past? Like, that is psychotic shit. I understand humans had to detonate nuclear weapons to understand how they function, but using nuclear atomic weapons against humans is insanity. So, and it was horrific, and it was fucking nuts and reckless, and I would say wrong. So, that said, that's my opinion. There are other ways to wage war. Atomic weapons ought not be one of them. All atomic weapons should be removed from planet Earth and deactivated, is my opinion. Now, I understand that we, as a human race, need to have some atomic weapons in a stockpile somewhere in the event that we need to use them in space on a meteorite or so. I don't know. Whatever we can figure out in the laws of physics that will allow for us to use atomic weapons in some way that will not be harmful to humans, then obviously, naturally, we need to have some atomic weapons somewhere. But for modern warfare, fuck no. Absolutely not. That should be outlawed on planet Earth. That said, in terms of what took place with regard to nuclear weapons being detonated in and around Japan during wartime, observe how, after so many decades of time, it's as if those nuclear weapons, and I'm not saying politically, I'm not talking about the political fallout, I'm not talking about the psychological aspects of it all, the political aspects of it all, I'm talking about environmentally. Environmentally, look how it's as if, by observation, there hadn't been any damage there. That's what I'm saying. It is tragic what took place. Psychologically, politically, it's fucked up. And I would imagine that there are still traces of radiation in the environment. But, notwithstanding, observably, as the human eyes and senses can see and detect, one would not know that there was a nuclear detonation that had taken place there. Unless one knew from record. If you didn't know, and you're someone just who doesn't, for whatever reason, know the history, and someone were to take you to that location physically on the ground and say, hey, what do you think about this place? Do you like being here? Do you think this is a cool community? Do you like this neighborhood? Like, is this somewhere where you could live? Like, what do you think? If that person doesn't know that nuclear weapons were detonated there, that person would have no inclination, no inkling, no way to know. So, in that, when you look at global warming and what is taking place on Earth in terms of the phenomenon, what a lot of people who argue against global warming don't realize is that in the global warming scenario, greenhouse effect, greenhouse gases, if you will, the ozone. At some point when we were kids, we were told that there were holes in the ozone and that those ozone layer holes were being depleted, and it was a dire situation because of greenhouse gases and fluorocarbons. That was the big thing, CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. Oh my God, let's look this up. We're going to have to Google this because when we were kids, we were told that Aquanet hairspray and other types of, let's see, fluorocarbons. Okay, hold on. Here we go. Chlorofluorocarbons are non-toxic non-flammable chemicals containing atoms of carbon, chlorine, and fluorine. They are used in the manufacture of aerosol sprays, blowing agents for foams, and packing materials as solvents and as refrigerants. And that is a citation from E is in Echo, S is in Sierra, R is in Romeo, L is in Lima, ESRL.NOAA, NOAA, that's November, Oscar, Alpha, Alpha.gov. ESRL.NOAA.gov. Chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, NOAA Earth System Research. So when we were kids, man, the big thing was that we were told that fucking hairspray, like Aquanet type shit, whatever hairspray was being used, aerosol cans, because we were using all these aerosol cans to, like, you know, spray up our hairdos and shit like this, that we were destroying Earth. We were fucking destroying the planet, man. And that the ozone layer, and that there were many holes in the ozone layer, and this was the cause. It was caused by Aquanet. We had the acid wash jean jackets and shit. We had the denim. We had the leather jackets, and we had the fucking hairdos that were spiked, and we'd have the crazy wave do and all these different do's and hairdos. And you keep it propped up, man. You keep it upright by hitting it with the fucking Aquanet, the Aquanet hairspray. By the way, my homeboys out there who know about Rap Musk, psst, psst, Rap Musk, motherfucker. So, you know what I'm spraying? So, yeah. So that said, woo, Twister, fucking the hairspray Aquanet shit back then was supposedly destroying Earth. That's what we were told. People believed it. They bought it. Well, I'll say this, man. All the nuclear weapons that Russia and the United States detonated during the Cold War to experiment and to try to determine, infer, surmise, ascertain, as I always say, to deconstruct, dissect, analyze, to conjecture the effects of detonation of nuclear weapons on this planet, cumulatively speaking, the cumulative effect, the net overall effect of it all, humans are still here. Do you know how many hundreds of nuclear weapons the Russians and the Americans detonated? Hundreds of nuclear fucking weapons, man. Hundreds of nuclear weapons on planet Earth have been detonated. And humans are still here. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever seen the map where during the Cold War, the Russians and the Americans and the Russians detonated nuclear weapons to try to figure out what would happen in an exchange? Isn't it interesting how humans are still here after hundreds of nuclear weapons have been detonated? On the classified levels of reality, man, you know, a lot of shit, man, you find out is stage propped up. And there's a lot of ultra secret shit above top secret that governments that all seem to work together despite the fact that they appear, or rather, in contrast to the observation that they appear to be at odds with one another. It looks like governments, like, they have quarrels and they have issues and they take issue with each other and one another, and they have problems and they have these spats and they argue and they have fucking problems with each other, right? I believe at the core of it all, something's on this planet that controls all these governments. All this shit is micro-controlled, man. And the illusion that's cast is that they're at odds with one another, when in fact, they're really not. It's just made to appear that way so that humans can have some shit to fucking talk about and bicker about and blab about and be preoccupied with and about. So that's not my own analysis. That's actually George Orwell. That's actually from the book 1984. And I believe that is that is an accurate characterization. Mr. Orwell, he may have been a chrononaut. He may have been involved in time travel research. He may have been a chrononaut. He may have been someone who was and has been traveling through time by way of CERN, DARPA, NASA, IXS, Enterprise. I don't know, dude. Just seems like he was really fucking far ahead of the curve to have known everything to an absolute fucking T. And I would say, man, that if he is someone who was traveling through time and knew some shit, the way that he made it known cryptically what he knew was through a work of fiction in quotation marks. Because he knew way fucking too much, dude. For him to have just guessed. Just like, oh yeah, I'm an author and I'm just going to guess like 100 different things that are just totally random. I mean, they're based on my observations of like what the world's going to be like in like 100 years from now. He knew it all, dude. He knew it to a fucking absolute T. T. Lines crossed, fucking intersection T. Knew it. Every iota of it. He got the shit right. Mass surveillance, everything. How the fuck could he know that shit? Oh, he was just a really smart guy. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more to it than that. Now, that's my conjecture. That's my belief. It's my fucking opinion. And if he wasn't time traveling, he got hip to some shit. Someone told him some shit. He had access to some future intel through some type of chronovisor. Somehow, some way. Someone came to him and said, yo, this is what the future's going to be. Write this shit and put it in a book. So, humans have been doing a bunch of fucked up shit to the planet. And, despite such, the weather is still pretty much the fucking same as it has been in many different communities. People will tell you, nah, the weather, it's pretty, that's my Larry David, pretty normal. He says good. That's my Larry David impression. Larry does it the best, man. He's Larry David. I love that guy. Larry, if you're listening to this, man, I want to roll, man. I like to get up and audition, man, for your show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Funniest show ever, man. And I mean that hands down. Love Larry David, man. Seen every Seinfeld, seen every Larry David ever made. Brilliant mastermind of a show. Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David is the man. And I mean that genuinely. As is Ron Howard with Arrested Development. Spoiler alert. If you've seen Curb Your Enthusiasm and you haven't seen Arrested Development, keep in mind, there are characters who cross over and vice versa. If you've seen Arrested Development and haven't seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, there are, spoiler alert, characters who cross over. Yo, so at any rate, yeah. So humans have been doing shit to this planet that people have said, observers have said, things that are not good. And despite that, atmospherically, in some spaces, in some towns, in some communities, if you ask people, they will say to you, nah, I don't know about these people talking about these like weird shifts in like the weather and all this stuff. We've lived here for 50 years and 60 or 70 or however many years, and it's pretty normal here. Shit seems pretty normal here. So, that is what is interesting when you look at the larger assessment of what is global climate change. Global warming, the greenhouse effect, supposedly, I learned, I'm almost a half a century old. Not exactly, but fucking close enough. When I was in school back in the 70s and 80s, again, we were told, CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. Say it with me. Chlorofluorocarbons. Chlorofluorocarbons. Right? It's a mouthful. But that's what we were told. That's what we were inculcated with. That was ingrained into our minds that we were depleting the ozone. But guess what, dude? now the ozone layers the ozone layer has been healed. It's healed itself. It's been repaired, despite all the shit that humans are supposedly doing. So it's really interesting, dude. When you look at basic science, what you were told, what I was told, what we were told in science class, and how you have these emissions, these greenhouse gases, and how they get trapped inside the atmosphere, right? Because of all this fucking carbon output and shit. It acts as this like dense layer of this like smog, and then the fucking oxygen is just like stuck there, and it's like shit heats up and starts to boil and turns the earth into a furnace of lava, and it's like hell, right? So, okay, right, that always happens because the earth was 10,000 fucking degrees Fahrenheit at some point, and that was the average temperature on planet Earth, with or without fucking humans. With or without humans. So, global warming is not a function of humans and their Aquanet fucking hairspray cans. Okay? Anyone can be a scientist. A scientist is someone who adheres to the principles of the scientific method. That's what a scientist is. If you get up every day and you apply science, if you apply the craft of scientific analysis, you are a fucking scientist. You don't have to go to a university and get a PhD to be Dr. Dre, motherfuckers. Man, you could be a Dr. Dre on the wheels of steel, spinning records, man, because, yo, you got skills like that. You feel that? I'm not a PhD at the time of this recording. I'm Dr. Grove on the microphone, man. I'm a rap artist. So, yo, if you want to be a scientist like any of the scientists of times past, look at Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest scientists of all time. What was he doing in school? I don't know, man. Let's look it up, man. Where did Nikola Tesla go to school? Come on, let's Google this. Nikola Tesla. Let's see where he attended school. Nikola Tesla. Come on, motherfucking Google. Come on, Google. Cooperate, motherfucking Google. Okay, there we go. Yeah, you want to fuck with me, huh? Well, I'm trying to fucking do this goddamn podcast. Nikola Tesla school. Yeah, because shit's normal, huh? Yeah, when I'm not doing the fucking podcast, but when I'm doing... No, I know, because I'm using bandwidth. I'm just fucking around. Let's see. Okay, he attended the Polytechnic School at Graz for 4 years and spent a year at the University of Prague, 1879 to 1880. Nikola Tesla, encyclopedia.com. He was born Smiljan. He was born in Smiljan. I don't know if I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Smiljan. In Croatia on July 9, 1856. And again, he attended the Polytechnic School at Graz, or Graz, however it's pronounced, for 4 years and spent a year at the University of Prague, 1879 to 1880. And that's from encyclopedia.com. All right. So let's see. Nikola Tesla, inventor, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and futurist, Serbian-American. Okay. Bill Gates, I believe he had been at Harvard, left Harvard, and he's one of the smartest dudes ever on planet Earth. And has been, multiple times in a row, the wealthiest man on planet Earth. So... if you want to be about science, just be about science, man. Just fucking be about it. Just be about it. Yeah, just apply the scientific method, which is logic. That is the scientific method is logic. If you apply logic and you research and you do this on a perpetual basis, continuing, ongoing basis, then you are involved in science. You are doing research. You are doing analysis, conducting research, conducting analysis. And if you care to publish your findings, then you are contributing to the realm, the world, the field of science. And that is a fact. So, what I have observed in my research, in my observation, in my study of Earth, and its atmosphere and atmospheric conditions, geology, geography, topography, and climatology. The hold on, let me close these fucking windows here. Close this, close this, close this, close this, close this, close this, this, and there we are. So the Earth has heated and cooled, cooled and heated, heated and cooled, cooled and heated. It's done this pattern. It's a tug of war. It goes back and forth. So in less than 50 minutes, what I can show you is this. I can prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt, if you want to look at the heating and cooling cycle, let's Google it. Heating, and you'll see some things that perhaps you have never considered before, so that when these people talk about global warming is such a farce. It's so farcical. It is so just totally not for real. Heating and cooling. Let's look at heating and cooling. It said heating and fooling. I said heating and cooling, motherfucker. Heating and cooling. Boom, 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 boom. Physics. Boom, 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 boom. Heating. Boom, 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 and cooling. All right. Let's see. Physics. That's my little beatbox. Okay, here we go. Heating and cooling physics. Motherfucker physics. So it says, Principles of Heating and Cooling, Department of Energy. So this is energy.gov. It says, quote, understanding how heat is transferred from the outdoors into your home and from your home to your body is important for understanding. This little rap. Just kind of put that shit into a rap from fucking energy.gov. Because it's my government. It's your government. It's our government. And I have the right to properly cite this shit. Because you've got the right to fight for your fight, to right to your fight, to your right. That doesn't even make any sense. I was doing an homage to Beastie Boys, and it's like, fight for your right to party. Okay, so it says right here. Principles of heat transfer. All right. Heat is transferred to and from objects, such as you and your home, via three processes: conduction, radiation, and convection. All right, so that's what it says. This is energy.gov. Conduction, this is all quoted, cited from energy.gov. Conduction is heat traveling through a solid material. On hot days, heat is conducted into your home through the roof, walls, and windows. Heat reflecting roofs, insulation, and energy-efficient windows will help to reduce that heat conduction. Radiation is heat traveling in the form of visible and non-visible light. Sunlight is an obvious source of heat for homes. In addition, low wavelength, non-visible infrared radiation can carry heat directly from warm objects to cooler objects. Infrared radiation is why you can feel the heat of a hot summer or a hot burner. Doesn't say summer. Is why you can feel the heat of a hot burner element on a stovetop even from across the room. All right, so convection is another means for heating, is another means for the heat from your walls and ceiling to reach you. Cooling your body. Your body can cool down through three processes: convection, radiation, and perspiration. Ventilation. Convection occurs when heat is carried away from your body. Okay? So convection occurs when heat is carried away from a body. Radiation occurs when heat radiates across the space between you and the objects in your home. This is all energy.gov. And I'm citing this for a reason. Okay? So there's exothermic and endothermic. The difference between exothermic and endothermic. We are going to look at, it's probably not going to let me access Google via the microphone. Yeah. Difference between exothermic and endothermic. Fuck you, Google! Says no internet connection. Yeah, because I'm doing the fucking podcast. All right, so we're going to have to do this by hand. And by the way, I like Google. I'm just talking shit. Endothermic versus... I don't want just the definition, bitch. Endothermic versus exo. There we go. Endothermic versus Okay, so this is okay. Come on, Wikipedia. Y'all niggas on Wikipedia don't have some motherfucking endothermic versus exothermic and shit. So this website right here, this is, come on, Wikipedia. Okay, here we go. Here's Khan Academy. So this is installed. So exothermic. I hope y'all got some. Unless you're scientists, I hope y'all got some. Shit to write with here. In this Once Grove classroom here. This classroom of Once Grove. Man, this shit is fucking stupid. Hurry the fuck up, computer. Do what the fuck you're supposed to do. Okay. So I was hoping to have a Wikipedia, because it's non-scholarly, and I like to fuck with Wikipedia. Let's just do it like this, because this thing is taking a really long time to cooperate, and it's just being fucking stupid. So let's just go here to endothermic definition. We'll bring this to you first. So it says here, endothermic. So I don't know if y'all were following what I was talking about there, but what I was talking about was I was hoping that something would come up in Wikipedia in terms of what it was that I just queried. But there wasn't anything readily available, and it was a bunch of other websites by third parties. So endothermic, it says right here, is a reaction or process accompanied by or requiring the absorption of heat. All right. So endothermic in chemistry is requiring the absorption of heat. So it's energy, it's heat going into something. Hence the word endothermic. Okay, so it's a therm. It's heat energy going into something, to a body, right? So what do you think exothermic is? This is my fucking point. It was my point all along. Y'all niggas should have gotten this from the fucking get-go. So now let's look at exothermic. Okay? And there it is. Voila. Exothermic, of a reaction or process accompanied by the release of heat. Okay? So exothermic is something exiting, right? It's the energy exiting, leaving, right? Okay? So, now that you know, if you didn't fucking already know, if you didn't know, and by the way, that's not how I spoke to my students, K through 12, some college graduate, some college undergraduate students, when I taught off and on in a private school for 10 years. Don't worry, I didn't ever use profanity, and I didn't talk the way that I do, like I do here in this podcast. So check it out. So this is what I've been leading up to, and this is what I'm getting to, and this is going to show you some shit. It's going to illustrate for you and highlight and describe and characterize for you, put into perspective for you as I characterize this scenario, as I demonstrate some shit that you might not have thought about in terms of global warming, global climate change, because when you hear it described and you hear someone characterize global climate change and global warming with all of their doom and gloom and all the shit that they often talk about, I'm going to characterize and describe it differently for you, and I'm going to put it into a perspective that perhaps you have not previously contemplated, considered, or thought about. All right? So, heat contraction. Heat contracts. Heat contracts. Heat contraction. Okay. So, this is from Pennsylvania State University. Thermal expansion and contraction. Materials expand or contract when subjected to changes in temperature. Most materials expand when they are heated and contract when they are cooled. Okay? So again, materials. This is Pennsylvania State University thermal expansion and contraction. Quote, thermal expansion and contraction. Materials expand or contract when subjected to changes in temperature. So think of Play-Doh. Think of clay, like perhaps humans. So you've got these like are like a tug of war. It goes this way and it goes that way, right? You're trying to take this malleable substance and move it this way and move it back this way and that way and this way, right? Most materials expand when they are heated. Kind of like a balloon when you put fucking goddamn helium into it and then it balloons and it expands, right? Most materials expand when they are heated and contract, shrink, that is, when they are cooled, right? That's what's happening to the Earth, is my motherfucking goddamn point, is that it is expanding and it is contracting. All of these different elements are like being pulled and expanded, and then they're like cooling and shrinking. They're expanding and they're ballooning, and then they're cooling and shriveling and shrinking. And this has been going back and forth, dude. It's the ebb and the fucking flow of the atmosphere in the universe. That's some natural shit. It fucking happens over time. Okay? It just happens. It's not a function of fucking humans. It's a function of the motherfucking universe. Okay? Humans are a function of the universe. It's not the other way around. The universe isn't a function of humans. All right? So, global climate change is not a function of humans. Don't be fucking stupid. So check this out. What's a brownout? Brownout definition. A reduction in or restriction on the availability of electrical power in a particular area. Well, think of electrical power as heat energy. Just think of it as heat energy in the spectrum. Just say it's electrical. It could generate some fucking heat, right? So a brownout is a reduction in that heat energy. So when something has been hot for so long and then it's expanding and then it cools, boom, zip, zilch, just whoomp, it's out. It's gone. Because it's been so fucking hot and cold. Hot and cold. Hot, 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 hot. Now it's zip, gone. It's browned out. See? So, my point, larger point that I've been making this entire time is when you look at the greenhouse effect, the greenhouse effect for you niggas who say that you woke, say that you stay woke. So check this out. This is what I learned when I was a kid, when I was in elementary school. This is the definition of greenhouse effect for y'all mumble mouth ass niggas who mumble rap and shit, and you like mumble rappers and you fucking subscribe to and pay attention to all that noise, all that banter, all that banal cacophony of fucking nonsense that you call music. Yeah, I'm talking about the auto-tune, okay? Y'all niggas who have never heard of the greenhouse effect, or you know very little about it because it's a vague notion in your mind, it says right here, quote, the trapping of the sun's warmth in a planet's lower atmosphere, like right motherfucking here, right? Due to the greater transparency of the atmosphere to visible radiation. So they're saying greater transparency. You want me to put it into fucking perspective for you? So you know how you got like tinted windows and shit, and you're fucking hotboxing and you're smoking weed in your fucking car, right? The shit ain't very transparent because niggas can't really see in there very much because you got tinted windows, right? What if all of a sudden some Harry Potter-like type nigga just hit you with the wand of whoop, now your windows ain't tinted anymore, nigga. Now niggas can see through your motherfucking tint because there ain't no tint anymore, okay? Now niggas is exposed as hotboxing and shit. And we can see all the smoke and shit inside your motherfucking hotbox, inside your motherfucking whip, i.e. your car and shit. Right? Boom. Greenhouse effect, motherfucker. That's greater transparency. In other words, it's easier to see in. Okay? Of the atmosphere to visible radiation from the sun than the infrared radiation emitted from the planet's surface. So the shit gets trapped inside the atmosphere, starts to heat up. So when these people talk about global climate change, right, and they talk about global warming, they talk about the earth heating up, getting hot, hotter and hotter and hotter, which is what they keep talking about. Some of these motherfuckers don't know what they're talking about. And that's where they stop in their calculus. That's where they stop in their approximation. They think it's just going to keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter. What they don't remember is that what happens is that ultimately shit cools down, it browns out. It browns out because it's been going back and forth and back and forth. And then pretty soon that energy that used to be there is like, zoom, dissipated. Now, is there always that potential to do work, kinetic energy? Yeah, energy's never fucking destroyed. It's always there. But the heat energy that was once there is no longer there in that same state. State has changed. Now it's browned out. So it cools. And overall, it becomes cooler. So the Earth becoming cooler is a function of global warming. Have you considered that? Some niggas just, they hear global warming and they're like, yeah, everything's just gonna keep getting hotter indefinitely. They don't remember or realize, and they didn't even fucking, some of them even know, one component of that is that warming leads to cooling. Warming leads to cooling because it's a cycle. And then after so long of it being cool and cold and like a mini ice age, it will go back to being warm. Because it ebbs and it flows and it's yin and it's yang and it's back and it's forth. And that's the nature. That's the duality. That is the harmonious balance of it all. The dark, the light, the dark. It's back and forth. That's the continuum, man. Those are the continuous coordinates. Because when you look at parallels, right? Two lines that never intersect, what are they? They're just that. They're parallel. They run side by side, but they never touch, right? Okay, those are continuous coordinates. Parallel lines are continuous coordinates because they're continuous indefinitely out into infinity, right? Wrong. So here's where shit gets fucking crazy. The conundrum, in other words, get this, follow me, because you're like Grove in math, like, two parallel lines, they never intersect because they're running parallel indefinitely. Right? Wrong. That's right. I said wrong. And you're probably like, Grove, like, how can you even be talking like this? You sound like a madman. This is not even science. This is fucking nuts. This is absolutely fucking crazy. Well, I'm here to share with you the paradox of the multiverse. You see, time is nonlinear. So what you have is this belief that you have zero of something, which means that there is nothing, right? Because that's what zero means, right? Or some would say, well, it really means, Grove, because I have a background in math. I have a PhD in math is what you might have. You might have a PhD in math. And you may say, zero doesn't really exactly mean nothing. It means that it's undefined. Fair enough. And I would agree that in some respects, it does suggest that something is undefined. Does it mean that there's no value there? Does it mean that there is nothing there? It doesn't, does it? Necessarily. Because there isn't such thing as nothing. There is always something. Even in what appears to be nothing, there is something. It is impossible for there to be nothing. There is always something in that space. Space consists of everything. Space is a vacuum in which all things exist. So the paradox is that time loops back on itself. And if time loops back on itself, then you don't just have parallels. Those parallels, they actually intersect at some point, which, though it appears that they're moving parallel and that with the curvature of space, they'll just keep continuing continuously as they are continuous coordinates. But keep in mind that everything is actually one. In other words, everything is the same thing and therefore intersects, even parallel lines.